TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the Easter show on the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Easter to everybody, wherever you are in the world. We wish you, if you are celebrating Easter, all the blessings for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your work colleagues. And as Nathan East says every Sunday, bro, when he walks out of church, he's praying for peace. So I think we should join him in that message, and we pray for peace too, bro. What do you reckon?
Yes, pray for peace and many blessings to everyone. Yes, happy Easter, everyone. And I hope you've had a wonderful day, enjoying time with family or loved ones, and celebrating, whether it be, on the phone, or whether it be, in each other's company, and just enjoying each other's love and familyness and celebrating Easter.
100%, bro. It's a great time of the year. It's a holiday here in New Zealand. I suspect, too, in Australia it is.
Yes.
We have Good Friday off and Easter Monday, so it's a nice long weekend. So even if you don't believe in the spiritual significance of Easter, one of the great things about the Easter weekend holiday here in New Zealand, bro, is it gives people opportunities to have reunions, school reunions, sports reunions, family reunions. You can schedule that, where it's going to be next year. Yeah. So if you aren't following the Easter Bunny route, you're following the other route, bro, and you're still managing to have a good time. What do you reckon?
Oh yeah, it's always a good time to catch up. I mean, it is a very important time in the calendar for Christians and people who believe in God and Jesus, but also a wonderful time for people to catch up and catch up on important things in their life that spreads love and kindness and joy. So
yeah, well done. Yeah, it's a big deal for me, bro. Easter's a big deal for me. Yes. I go to the Triduum, which is the 3 masses. So and then when you get back on Saturday, bro, you can, in the old days, I used to crack other things, now all I'm cracking, bro, like you, is just, Coke, no sugars, and Easter
Zero.
eggs. So I'm gonna.
Mine's got a it's a bro one. Too. Oh, disappearing. Coke Zero with a bro on it. Yeah.
So grab your Easter eggs.
I was just cracking my Coke Zero. Yep. And I got an Easter egg here.
Good on you. Yeah, I've got milk chocolate, bro. I'm gonna crack it. I've been holding, waiting for this one. Look at that. There's the ear. There's the ear.
I held off this one. I thought I'll keep it for the show. So yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yummy. Who's in the chat joining us, bro? Anyone here?
We have Simon Williams, the Rock Professor's here. Happy Easter, Simon. And we're wishing you, many blessings and speedy recovery, mate. We're looking forward to seeing you back on the show, and I hope everything's going well for you, Simon. So cheers to that. Yep.
We've got Jonas here too.
Jonas, yep. We've got bros in the. It's like a bro fest. We've got all bros in the chat. So yeah.
Thank you, bro, for jumping on. There's a couple of things too that I want to do before we start the show, guys. Too, it's an important part of the year. This year, where you should be giving thanks to family and friends. I want to give thanks, especially to you and the Rock Professor. And obviously, I might do this a little bit later if we have some other people joining us, because while you and the Rock Professor come on and give time yourselves from your family, it's an hour, 2 hours a week that you guys are dedicating out of your timetable schedule for the show. Also, people like Jonas, your mum, who are here weekly, they're dedicating time from their lives to jump on and join us. So thank you, Brad. Thank you, Rock Professor, and thank you everybody for watching and jumping on, because without you guys, we'd have nothing.
Thank you, Andrew. The sentiment is exactly the same to everyone who joins us every week, to everyone who, comments and watches the shows later. But yes, big thanks to family, friends, yourself, Andrew, and Simon, for exactly just mirroring exactly what you said, Andrew. Yeah.
Well, here she is. She's just jumped into the chat.
Yep. Happy Easter. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Alan. Thank you for jumping on. We've cracked our Easter eggs. We couldn't wait for you, Alan. Sorry. Brad was saying, come on. I want to get into that egg.
Yeah. The only time of the year I really allow myself to eat chocolate properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, mate, same here. Because I love chocolate, bro. I could eat chocolate every night. I could, bro.
Oh yeah.
But I have to practice the human virtues, bro. One of the human virtues is self-control, bro.
Yeah.
Of the appetites.
I hear. I'd be the size of a truck if I could. You know what I mean? I'd be the size of a truck if I was allowed to eat and drink and do whatever I liked every night. Yeah.
Me too, bro. So we've got some news, folks. Excuse me for talking with my mouth full. It's bad manners.
It's okay.
But we break rules. We break rules on this channel. We break rules, bro.
Especially when the Rock Professor's not here to toe us in line. Oh, he's in the chat. I just stuffed up.
Johnny Heartbreaker's just jumped on. Happy Easter, Johnny Heartbreaker. So next week, if you guys haven't already seen the notification, we're starting the show a little bit later next week. I was just talking to Brad, the backdoor man, before we went live, that we've got a guy that I've been talking to for a while. His name is Matt. He's from Prague. He's a Jack Bruce fanatic. He's got an EB bass, loves Cream.
Yep.
I'll attach, when we're talking, his channel here on the chat for you to go and check out. So I've been trying to get him onto the channel to talk about Jack Bruce and Cream, etc., etc. So he's managed to give us a slot. So we're going to be going live with him next week, probably just for an hour and a half. Usual story, bro. Won't be, but it'll be later than normal start time. So sorry about that.
That's all right. That's fine. Looking forward to that one. That's fine. Perfect. Yeah.
And you've already done a shout out to the Rock Professor because he's here, so that's good.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's good to see you, Rock Professor.
Oh, while I remember too, I'm going to ask Brad now, because we sort of said that we would stop this. I mean, we would mention this at the end of the show, but we probably won't, because I'm getting old. So I normally do things straight away when I remember them. So we know the main subject of the show, so we'll always come back to that. But I was talking to Brad before we kicked off the show about his thoughts and opinions. And we love all things Beatles on this channel. So a couple of weeks ago, there was some controversy around the release of 4 actors cast to act in a new biopic of the Beatles. So Brad and I haven't had an opportunity to talk about that, nor the Rock Professor. So I'm quite keen, Brad, to get your opinions on the idea of a film and what you've heard.
Well, what I've heard is similar to what we discussed in the green room, Andrew, is that there's going to be 4 movies which will be based around each member of the Beatles, their point of view within the band, and their journey, I guess, for lack of better ways of putting it, Andrew, because each of them had a different perspective, obviously, of their journey throughout the Beatles. The only thing I'm not familiar with is a few of the actors, but I would assume, Andrew, that they pick the actors based around their audition. and their portrayal of the character and how believable they were, as opposed to the look of the artist. I mean, look, you're never going to get a dead ringer that's a good actor as well. It's that would be like, I guess, a lack of better ways of putting it, Andrew. That would be like a blessing to get that, but you're not going to find that. So the reality is, once you start watching a movie and your character comes on, say hypothetically, your John Lennon comes on, you start just falling into that. It's not something that, looking at the actual pictures of the people they've picked for the roles, I was a bit surprised. I was like, well, are they going to pull that role off? For example, the Ringo, the guy's playing the Ringo, the guy's playing the John. I guess, for lack of better ways of putting it, they would have been picked based on their acting skills and how well they portrayed that character. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
Good point, and I'll tell you one thing in the research that I've done too, which might become quite obvious to a lot of you folks. Yes, there's a resemblance to these guys, to the characters they're playing. Are they dead ringers? Of course not. But look at all the films, the biopics that have come out recently. You can't say that they're dead ringers, but they get into character, and it's the character that comes through and issues forth. One of the key things that these guys were picked, and you've got to remember this, folks, this is not an Elvis film where you've got an actor standing there with a bass and a guitar playing bullshit chords. These guys are real players, real drummers, real keyboardists, and they have to be. So when they're going to be playing in Hamburg in 1962, Brad, they're going to be playing that proper C and G and D chord, bro.
Well, you would assume that they would be, yes. I mean, the thing is, I guess there's so many aspects of trying to pick an actor to do a role, Andrew. And for me, one of the best biopics based on an artist was Val Kilmer's portrayal of Jim Morrison. And I know the screenplay or the actual, the portrayal of Jim Morrison may have been very one-sided or not completely accurate based upon what history says about Jim Morrison, but he didn't look like Jim Morrison. But once he got into that role, he started to morph a little bit into that look as well. And it's amazing what makeup and hair and costume does to fit them in the role. But Val Kilmer put himself right into that role, Andrew, including living like Jim Morrison for a period of time before the show started even filming, and learning the songs, learning how to sing them, learning the lyrics, to the point where a lot of the live performance in the movie is actually Val Kilmer singing, instead of it being an actual performer. It's actually Val Kilmer. That's how much he put himself into that role. If people didn't know that, that's what he actually did, and that's why I think he did such an amazing job of that role. But these gentlemen that are picked for that, maybe that's the same case. They're going to live and breathe their character, and look, they wouldn't just handpick actors, Andrew, that don't know what they're doing. They obviously would have had to audition, and they would have picked the actors that were right for the role.
Oh, look, I agree with you, and I think one of the things that we have to bear in mind too is, let's celebrate the project. If it's a shit film, we'll know after we've gone to see it. The Freddie Mercury film that I saw, I thought that was really, really good. The David Bowie film, the last film that I went and saw, the one with Bob Dylan, I thought was exceptional. It's probably one of the films of of the year. The Elvis one that came out a couple of years ago, bro.
That was great.
That was incredible.
Yeah. No, there's been some great ones come out of late. So let's hope that, and being a massive Beatles fan, it's always good to have something extra, Andrew, to sink our teeth into. It's let's celebrate the Beatles, and it's not. But the movies haven't even been released yet, and people are talking negatively about it. You know what I mean? Let's just wait and see what is to come. I don't know when they're due to be released, Andrew. Do you know when
Well,
they're going to be released?
speaking of negative things,
Hmm.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it here on the channel. I'm gonna say this. No, I won't say it. No, I won't. I'll get myself into trouble. I won't.
Oh
I
no.
won't. No, I won't say it. I'll talk to you about and the rock professor about this later. No, I won't say it.
You're gonna have everybody now wondering the whole episode what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's a little bit political though, and you know the rules on politics, bro. So no, I won't do it.
Okay.
But like you, I'm looking forward to it. And let's can it. If it's shit when it comes out, bro, we'll say it.
Yeah,
We'll do a
I mean,
review.
exactly. We'll give it its due course. Let's see what happens, and let's wait and see. Give it an opportunity to prove itself before proving guilty.
So I'm just gonna before we talk about the proper show, folks, I'm gonna just back Brad up here by saying Val Kilmer, because we've spoken about Val Kilmer's portrayal of Jim Morrison many times on the show. When we've spoken about Jim Morrison, it's one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest music biographies. And I'm going to also ask you, I watch it at least once a year, Jamie Foxx acting as Ray. It's an old film, 2003 or so. It came out quite early. Incredible performance.
Yeah. No, that was one of the ones I really enjoyed as well. I think once you got to give these things a chance, because once you dive into the movie and you just let yourself, enjoy it for what it is and not think, oh, that person doesn't look like Ringo or that person doesn't look anything like Paul McCartney. Give it a chance. We'll wait and see what happens. As you know, Val Kilmer didn't look anything like Jim Morrison until the film. And he did. Once you slipped into watching the film, you started to just, man, he's become Jim. And I know there's a lot of stuff in there. There was a bit of stuff that wasn't quite historically correct in there, and
who cares?
But there's some creative liberty they needed to take to make it a story as well. But the wonderful thing it did do is celebrate and push the Doors music again. From 20 odd years later, the Doors got another push and an opportunity to evolve into a new fan base. So, it was funny because when the Doors movie came out, I got a little bit, I guess, my nose put out of joint a bit because I was a massive Doors fan before it, and I felt like it was my thing. And then everyone started in my group of friends liking the Doors, and because of the movie.
I know.
And I was like, how dare you? I'm a Doors fan.
Yeah. What are you doing? You fly-by-nighters. You 5 minute. You fair weather fans.
Yeah, you're falling into this now. But I guess, from a lack of better ways of putting it, I think it's a fantastic thing for the Beatles music as well. It'll push it into everybody loves the Beatles, but it'll open the avenue for a new fan base as well.
One film though, bro. One film that I had a lot of hope for, and I watch it now and again, and I cringe when I watch it now, and I've stuck up for it a couple of times. It's not because the acting is bad. The guy that's acting as the person that we're going to be talking about does a really, really good job. He even learnt to play the guitar, left-handed. He does a really, really good job. He got his hair done and all that. But it just sucked because he couldn't play Jimi Hendrix's music, bro.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the movie you're talking about. Yeah, it's disappointing, and I guess, for lack of better ways to put it, the Hendrix family would need to put their stamp of approval on something like that for it to be, to have the actual songs in there and give it a vibe. You know what I mean? I know at one point there was talks about someone like Lenny Kravitz actually doing a Hendrix biopic, and then there was someone else as well. But anyway, that's, I guess, for like a better way of putting it, probably never going to happen while the current estate of Hendrix stuff is in charge. So
yeah, well,
yeah,
I don't want to watch another Hendrix film where some guy's miming to something that's
not a
not
Hendrix song.
you know, one of the great things about that Led Zeppelin film becoming Led Zeppelin, why it was so good, bro, was because what's it about, bro? The
It's about the
music.
band, the music,
The
the
music.
band, the music. Yeah. Oh yeah, and that, I
If
mean,
you can't play it,
becoming Led Zeppelin is just, in my opinion, a mandatory watch for any music fan, whether you love Led Zeppelin or not. You really have to watch it. I've told that to nearly every single one of my muso friends after I watched it. They probably got sick of me talking about it. Go and watch Becoming Led Zeppelin. I know you're not a huge fan, but you need to watch it. It's an era thing. It's a time that'll never be replicated again, Andrew, in history.
Alan, I'll see during the course of the show. I'll see if I can develop some courage to talk about the subject, the thing. If if I don't, I'll tell Brad, and I'll get Brad to pass on to you what I was going to talk about, so you're not out of the loop. I promise.
Yeah.
Tony's
Anyway, we're 20
saying,
odd minutes into a show. We haven't even spoken about the person we're meant to be talking about, Andrew.
it's all good. There's only one Hendrix. Yeah, well, that's right. Again, Rocket Man. I thought the guy that played Elton John didn't look like him, but when you watched him in the film, it was incredible. The young guy that acted as Freddie Mercury is just incredible.
Bohemian Rhapsody, yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
The one with David Bowie, bro. The guy that was acting in that, incredible.
Yeah. You to me, I mean, they didn't quite look exactly like the person they're portraying, but you fell into it, is what I'm saying. You fall into it. You enjoy it for what it is, and it's an opportunity to, see a biopic based around an artist you admire. So yeah, I think
I love them, bro. I love it.
Let's wait and see what happens with this Beatles one, because there's 4 movies we can go to the cinemas for, and I love going to the cinemas. It's an experience,
bro.
Yeah,
100%.
Oh,
and as usual too, bro, because Van Halen's a big part of our show. So I'm sorry for just pulling you back, bro. You just want to go in there and start talking about Ritchie Blackmore, but I just keep pulling you back. I'm sorry. But again, you go on these Van Halen Facebook groups, and nobody, there's no actor out there, no one who could portray Eddie Van Halen. We don't want anyone. We don't want anyone to portray and act like Eddie Van Halen. It's sacred. It's sacred, bro. We worship.
yes. Look, if there was a biopic based around Eddie or Alex or the Van Halen thing, I'd go and watch it. I'd go with an open mind. Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, but we know there's a lot of people in that fan group, which is, I've got to be honest with you, I think that we've met a lot of wonderful people in the Van Halen community, Andrew. But it is one of those communities that has to be the most dysfunctional I've ever known when it comes to supporting a band.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not go down that path, Andrew. We're not here for that reason. That's a whole show within itself. We could do a 2-hour show based around that. So.
And do you know why? And do you know why no one is good enough to play Eddie Van Halen? Because Valerie Bertinelli came out and said it herself. Yeah.
Or if she said it, then that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's deviate back on track. We're derailed quite a bit. It was Richie Blackmore's birthday last week, Andrew, on the 14th. I think it was the 14th. So,
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come on this week and, just say some, talk about a little bit about Ritchie Blackmore and the influence he had on both of us. And I know the Rock Professor as well. I know the Rock Professor would probably like to be part of this show as well, but I know it's maybe this time next year we'll be doing this sort of show again, Andrew. So Rock Professor will be part of it. But Ritchie Blackmore is an influence. I would say, yes, Simon, I've just seen your comment there. Deviate back on track. we can without you here. We'll try. I think Ritchie Blackmore would have to be right up there within my top 5 guitar players of all time, Andrew. I know that puts him up quite high, but I mean, there's such an amazing, history of guitar players out there. But Ritchie inspired so many wonderful guitarists out there, including Eddie Van Halen was a big fan of Ritchie Blackmore. And around that time frame, Andrew, when Ritchie was becoming quite successful, you had some amazing guitar players out at that time. Obviously, Jimmy Page, there was Clapton, there was Beck, there was Tony Iommi. There was a bunch of really big creative monsters, I'll put it that way, that were songwriters, riff meisters, sonic geniuses on guitar. The one thing that Ritchie had that a lot of the others didn't have, and still probably to this day, in my opinion, he had a certain flavor of playing, was a little bit more exotic than Clapton, Jimmy Page, even Jimi Hendrix, all those guys. He was very heavily influenced by them all, but he took it a little bit more down an exotic path on the guitar, on the fretboard. And from everything from the early recordings, where he's playing a 3-5-5, I think it was Ring That Neck and all those sort of recordings, and Hush, all the way through to Machine Head, then into the era of Deep Purple that is probably my favorite, with David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. But again, Andrew, I'm not going to go down and do what Van Halen fans do and go, that era is the only one that, to me, I love all eras. I love Deep Purple, even with what was the singer's name? The Rainbow Singer. What was his name, Andrew? I can't think of it. It's
Ronnie James.
awful.
Ronnie
No,
James.
not Ronnie James. The other one,
Gillan.
Jolene Turner.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that album, Slaves and Masters, I think it's called. But there's something about Ritchie's playing. That's a wonderful picture there. Ritchie on his 3-5-5, and he was a big Clapton fan as well. He loved all the guys that we love equally, and is influenced by them all, Andrew. But he had a very exotic feel on the fretboard, and he influenced a lot of players, including guys like Yngwie Malmsteen and guys like Doug Aldridge and all these guys that came from that. That I grew up listening to those guys as their number 1 or number 2 sort of players. Ritchie obviously he gets a lot of credit. I'll give him that, but he doesn't get enough. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know you're a big fan of Ritchie. I'm not going to ask you where you rank him in your top 10 or anything like that, or if he's even inside your top 10, but I know you're a big fan of his work. So, I mean, you can't say that you haven't been driving down a highway listening to Highway Star, and when that guitar solo kicks in, that you're sort of fist pumping the air. He's just a phenomenal guitar player. But Andrew, getting back to my question, I mean, what are your thoughts on him and where he sort of situated himself around the players at the time that were coming around? Like say, for example, the Pages, the Tony Iommis, that era of super groups. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Ritchie is that no one could ever, in my opinion, say that Deep Purple was heavy metal. To me, they'll always be a hard rock, a rock band. It's rock and roll. Yep. It's a rock band. But what's really interesting for me, when I was young, when I discovered this band, and the guys that were heavily Ritchie Blackmore nuts, like you, bro.
Yeah.
were metalheads as well.
Yeah.
You know, they were listening to Iron Maiden and Def Leppard and Judas Priest. And as I got older and did some research and started hearing about what these other guitar players themselves were saying about Ritchie Blackmore. So Ritchie Blackmore didn't sort of inspire a lot of, you know, blues guitar players as such, or pop commercial guys. He inspired, these metal guys, and you said it, Malmsteen and all these guys. There's a long list of guys. You watch any Gear review YouTube thing, and they'll talk about who's your influence, if he's a metalhead or Ritchie Blackmore will come up. So that's one of the things that I liked about Ritchie Blackmore, is that yes, he gave that melody that you've talked about to that new wave of British metal bands that came through. And without Ritchie Blackmore, I don't think you would have had those bands anywhere as successful, bro, as they became.
Oh, 100%. I mean, whether they acknowledge Richie as an influence or not, I still reckon he influenced guys like Iron Maiden, and he influenced the players around him. I mean, you listen to, when Deep Purple started making tracks with Machine Head. I mean, you look at In Rock when that came out, and Black Knight became big, and then Fireball and Machine Head. I mean, that album there, to me, Andrew, is almost a mandatory listen to. And that one, you can't not deny the fact that those two albums there are some of the most amazing records in history, including that one. And I mean, that's not as successful as the previous two, but there's some wonderful tracks on there. Made in Japan. I mean, that people always compare live performances to the genius that was that record, and you can hear the excitement and the unpredictability in Richie's playing on that record, in particular on Made in Japan. You know what I mean? You hear him, he sounds like he knows exactly what he's doing too. But he sounds like he's on the edge of the rails, ready to fall off at any time, but he doesn't. And I'm glad you highlighted those albums, Andrew, because in my opinion, they're some of the greatest classic rock albums ever recorded. And I don't think you'll ever experience a band doing that brilliance ever again. And a lot of it leaned quite heavily on Ritchie Blackmore. I mean, you've got to admit, without Ritchie Blackmore, Deep Purple was still good, and but they lost that flavour. I mean, when Tommy Bolin joined the band in place of Richie, it was a smart replacement. He did a great job. I'm not knocking him. I never would, because I'm a big Tommy Bolin fan as well. But Ritchie Blackmore, when he started Rainbow, that flavour went with Rainbow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I liked about Blackmore is, while he had that melody that we've just spent some time talking about, folks, he also had that edge, that unpredictability that Brad has said. One of the good things that we've done here on the channel is that all those albums that we've just put on here for you to have a look at, we've ranked all those albums. So go back, and if you're watching on a replay, we've got a playlist set up for Deep Purple. That's how important Deep Purple is to this channel, and our own music development as fans and guitar players. But I hear what you're saying. I like that edge and that unpredictability that Blackmore had in his playing. And clearly it's emblematic of who he is as a man too, because if you know anything about the guy, that's exactly what he was for a long, long time, bro. He was on the edge, not because he was taking drugs or anything like that. It's just that he was on that edge of creativity and just wanting to do things sometimes that other people around him couldn't keep up with, bro.
You couldn't have said it any more perfectly, Andrew. I think, we could end the show on that. That was perfectly put. But no, I'm not going to even try and go on more about what you just put the nail on the head. But I think with Ritchie, mate, you know, you only got to listen to. He was into other styles of music, classical. He was into lots of different styles, but he was. I mean, Deep Purple were a classic rock band. They were a super group, in my opinion. They were one of the foundational super groups, in my opinion, and they formed a brotherhood. And then you've got bands that are following suit, like Dead Daisies. They change members, but they keep the vibe. They keep the Deep Purple has had a wonderful way of doing that with members leaving and then replacing. They kept that vibe. But I think a big key component to Deep Purple's sound was Ritchie Blackmore, without a doubt. And I think whenever Richie's not part of it, it's still wonderful.
Yep.
But it just lacks that little thing that Ritchie brings to the flavor of the band, the exoticness, the unpredictability that you spoke about. So, Andrew, I've got a couple of questions I wanted to ask you in relation to. We have done some rankings of Deep Purple stuff, so I'm not going to ask you your rankings of songs or anything like that. But what would you say to someone who's never listened to Ritchie Blackmore play would be a great introduction to them to go and have a listen? Have you thought about this? Do you know? Is there one
This
particular
album.
track?
This album.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, bro. I
Yeah.
can't give you a track. You know, and I've thought about this. You know, last week we spoke about a couple of tracks that I could easily point at for somebody to say, look, go and listen to these tracks. But and I think Ritchie would be kind of happy that maybe I've said this, because he grasped, didn't he, this idea of the album concept, and in fact he took it further in Rainbow, didn't he? You know, this idea of the album doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Look, I'll never forget, bro, the first time I heard this album. You know, you and I and the Rock Professor spent over 2 hours talking about this this album, and the world wasn't the same for me. And mate, go and listen to this album. That would be me. What about yourself?
Well, I think Machine Head would be that one album that you would have to get everybody to go and listen to if they've never actually heard of Deep Purple or Ritchie Blackmore's playing, because I think on that album in particular, each member of the band had their own place and shined. Like there was no, this person's shining on the album, but the rest of them are sort of subdued or whatever. John Lord on that album is outstanding. Ritchie Blackmore, Ian Gillan, Roger Glover on bass, and Ian Pace he set the tone for drumming, in my opinion, on that album, for classic rock drumming. And
cool band, bro.
Oh yeah, such a cool band. But I know the lineup changed, but that album in particular is one of those ones that I do remember the first time I'd heard Smoke on the Water and all that, but the first time I listened to that record, I was absolutely blown away. And then after listening to that record, I'd go back and I'd listen to certain things like Lazy, and really focusing on what's going on there, and listening to the John Lord sort of leading up the song. And, it starts off and then the guitar comes in and you can hear that real Stratocaster tone, Andrew, I've always said it. I don't know if you remember, Andrew, when we were doing a lot of these Deep Purple album rankings, that Ritchie Blackmore has got the best Strat tone I've ever heard. I think his Stratocaster tone is perfection. It's, I love Hendrix, I love Stevie Ray, I love them all, love those Strat users, but I think Ritchie Blackmore nailed the perfect Strat and Marshall tone, my opinion.
I think we have to take it a step further, bro, too. Also, I totally 100% agree with you. One of the key things for me, playing Stratocasters over the years too, and fully understanding exactly where it's coming from. The fact is, while he's playing the Stratocaster, he's tamed that guitar. because you give a Stratocaster to anybody and plug it into an amp. Slash talks about it himself. He tried to do that. He tried to go and play a Strat through a Marshall, and he said, "I couldn't tame this thing. Wanted to go and do things that I couldn't, I couldn't control. At least with a Les Paul, he could sort of kind of control it a little bit. But you and I both know what single coils can do, bro. Through your bro.
There's a tonality quality that's quite remarkable with a Stratocaster, especially. And I'm not sure whether this is a valid reason or not, but I think the big headstock on a Stratocaster had a tonality quality, Andrew, and I think a little bit more timbre maybe might have done that. I might be wrong, I don't know, but I always thought when Richie hit those Stratocasters with the big headstocks through a Marshall, and I know he was using 200-watt Marshalls and things like that, but it was cranking. And that bridge pickup tone that he used to get, but I still reckon the best neck pickup tone I've ever heard is Ritchie Blackmore on No 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 off Fireball. It's one of those most remarkable Stratocaster tones I've ever heard. And I know we all love Strat players, Andrew, from Clapton when he gravitated to a Strat, to Stevie Ray, to, Hendrix. But I'm going to put my hand up and say, I think Ritchie Blackmore's Stratocaster tone for me is is without a doubt my favorite on those early records, especially that machine head tone. That's unbeatable. You can't go past it. You know what I mean?
100%, and it's always been a highlight for me too. And a close second for me, bro, if we're throwing out names, bro, if that's okay, would be Robin Trow, Bridge of Sighs. What that guy could do with the Strat through Marshall. A lot of guys couldn't do it, bro. There's a but Richie, it certainly set the benchmark.
Oh yeah. For me, and I know I have to say it like this because my son asked me to. His favorite era, which is predominantly the Glenn Hughes era, because he's a massive Glenn Hughes fan. So the Burn record pretty much gets spun at least 2 or 3 times a week in my car when my son's in the car. So I've heard Burn, especially in the last maybe 10 years, maybe more, but at least the last
20,000 times.
I reckon, in the old days on iTunes, you could see how many times you played a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon Burn would have to be my highest played song in my car in the last 10 years, without a doubt. And I'm still blown away, and I'll say it like this. I'm still blown away by that guitar solo in Burn. It's just incredible. It's one of his greatest achievements on guitar. Even his slide playing on Stormbringer. Andrew, he became a phenomenal slide guitarist as well. You know what I mean?
100%.
He took slide to another level on Stormbringer, that album in particular. There's a lot of slide there. But if people don't know who Ritchie Blackmore is, that's him on the right there. That's him. Andrew, I've got to say, I reckon those big headstocks played quite a significant role in his tone. I don't know whether I'm not, I've got a big headstock Strat from the 70s, and I've got a couple of Strats with big headstocks, and I've got a couple with smaller headstocks. And when I plug in, especially my 70s one, I get a very Ritchie Blackmore vibe with that guitar. I can't help it. It's just got that thing, But yeah, there's something very cool about Ritchie Blackmore as a guitar player. I think he had that swagger on the fretboard, and the way he portrayed himself. Very exotic player, but also a very eccentric personality, and that came out in his playing as well, Andrew. And there's Richie as the wizard. Is that a wizard hat, or what is that?
Yeah, he's a wizard.
Yeah, he's
The
a
Black Knight,
Fredward.
the Wizard.
He's a
Doesn't matter.
Fredward wizard, in my opinion. Yeah. So yeah, Blackmore's Night. What's his band called? Blackmore's Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an eccentric listen. It's worth listening to. It's definitely where his head's at the moment. I've always thought he's looked exceptionally cool throughout the years, including even in his older age. Andrew, he's kept that.
Mate, he looked better. He looks pretty good for a guy, an octogenarian. You know, he's yeah, and Brad and I were talking about this, folks, in the green room last week.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned this a few times on the channel during that lockdown process, and he was putting up videos on his channel. It seemed like every second day, bro, there was something going up on his channel. You know, he was
going live a lot. I don't know whether
Yeah.
all of them got. I don't know if they all got saved and kept there, but it was going live a lot and talking. And you know, his wife Candace was talking a lot to him about the old days and Deep Purple, and he was opening up a lot, which was phenomenal. It was like he had his pint with him.
He was half pissed sometimes.
He was drinking a pint, Andrew. Am I correct or not?
Yeah.
A pint? Yeah, his Guinness there or whatever, and he's drinking a pint, and he's talking about, you know, a lot to do, and he talks openly about Pagey, Clapton, all sorts of people, you know, in a positive way too, not necessarily bagging anyone or anything like that, just being a gentleman.
Exactly, and that was one of the things that I got too. I was watching him for a couple of hours there, you know, again during that process when we had a lot of time because we weren't doing a lot of things, and you know, and he came across statesmanly like. Obviously, you know, age had brought a little bit of responsibility with his legacy. He understood that, you know, when people in the chat were talking about him being this huge influence, etc., you know, and their music got him through, or them through dark days and happy days, and all, you know, he was really proud of that. You know, he was talking openly about the fact that, you know, he can look back and see all these bands, all these albums, you know, that he was a part of, and you know, and he's proud of that, bro. You know, and I like that. And he said that, you know, there's some darn good stuff there.
Yeah. You know, retrospectively, most artists that were, you know, not so open in the past, they seem to have, you know, old age is caught up and they realize that they've got a responsibility, Andrew, to, you know, maybe shed some light on stuff before it's too late. And I love how Richie has started doing that. I think that was a wonderful thing that he did through those lockdowns, and I encourage it. I know he went live not long ago a couple of times with his wife, you know, talking to him about songs in particular in Deep Purple and things like that. I love his interviews where he talks about, you know, how he reversed, was it Barks?
Yes.
I forgot what. Yeah, he talks about Smoke on the Water, how he reversed it and how he owes him royalties, and it's like he's a funny man. He's actually quite humorous. He's got a
and he's sharp. He's still sharp. And I really hope, bro, because we love biographies. We spent a half an hour talking about biopics, but we also love music biographies. I really hope he's working on an autobiography, bro. I hope he is.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. That would be wonderful. I mean, I'm sure he's got a lot of things he could, you know, put in a book. That's for sure. You know, he's had a you know, an exceptional life. I mean, he's played with some of the greatest musicians of all time. Let's be honest, you know. And I even love his story about, you know, George Harrison. I don't know if you heard that one, Andrew, where you know, George Harrison and him, you know, got him up on stage and everything like that. But there was a mutual respect there. I know George Harrison thought very highly of Ritchie Blackmore as a guitarist, and as did Ritchie think of George. You know what I mean? But I think the wonderful thing that you know, Richie Blackmore brought to guitar playing, he doesn't really talk about it enough, but is he's recorded some of the most amazing guitar solos of all time. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? Smoke
100%.
on the Water, that guitar solo is classic. Highway Star. I mean, geez. I mean, he used to, put harmonies on on himself as well. Like he used to record harmony parts in certain songs. Like I said, in Stormbringer, I've been listening to that a bit this week, and I thought, Jesus, a fair bit of slide on this album, Andrew. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't remember Richie playing that much slide before that record. Yeah, I
Yeah,
still,
I like the
yeah,
point too, bro, that you made a little bit earlier about him being a guitar player, where he certainly liked to produce himself and produce the band. As far as where he was going to slot and what he was going to do. Also, as far as his guitar solo is
mm,
concerned, but he's
mm,
also open to just winging it, smoke on the water.
yeah,
A great example of just okay, let's go.
yeah. And there are some wonderful examples of that, Andrew, as well. When the re-release of, you're talking about Machine Head, when that came out with 2 discs,
Yeah,
and I think Roger Glover did the mixes, and there's some alternate guitar solos and things like that. When Fireball, there's some extra tracks on the re-release of it, and you're hearing Richie and some of the unreleased stuff. I'm like, it's got a bit of funk to it and stuff like that. You're thinking, man, they should have released this, and I'm glad we've got that stuff to listen to now in retrospect. But I used to spend many, many hours in my car, my first car, my Datsun 180B, just driving along, listening and going the long way home, or going for a surf trip or whatever, just listening to Deep Purple, just to hear Richie Blackmore play guitar, just for those guitar parts. You know what I mean? I just
yeah,
loved it.
and thank you for raising that point too about that, because I remember reading too where they were talking to him about some of these tracks and his influences, and he was saying, often that he would be listening to other music, other bands, other artists, other gigs. He'd go and see a gig or whatever, and then come back into the studio and just play what he'd heard, the
Yeah,
night before, or coming to the studio. And
yeah,
so Brad just mentioned those funk tracks. You can imagine what he's probably listening to something, gone into the studio, and plug in, hit the record,
yeah.
and
Start playing.
um, start playing.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple of things, you know, that I want people to, consider this week moving forward when they, think about Richie Blackmore. If you're driving your car and you think, oh, I haven't listened to Deep Purple for a while, or Richie Blackmore, go and have a listen to, say, the song Fireball. Have a listen to
Yep,
that, the guitar parts on that song. Lazy. I mean, that's a masterclass in blues playing, Andrew. You know what I mean? The song Lazy. I don't know whether there's that many players out there that could play that classy the blues. I mean, that's a masterclass in blues guitar playing, in my opinion. Um, the song Stormbringer, it's got
yep,
you can hear the second guitar solo kick in over the first part of the solo. So he's dubbed one part and then he's recorded another part and they put it together as one solo. You can actually hear it. It's deliberate. It's like there's 2 guitar players playing. Go and have a listen to that. Um, Burn. My God, I mean, I just spoke about that. My son would be responsible for me listening to that as much as I have, but I never get sick of listening to that. And that solo is something phenomenal. That album you've got there, Andrew, in Fireball, there's a song on it called No, No, No.
yep.
I don't know if anyone's familiar with that track, but there's a live version floating around. They did a live performance of it, and it's on YouTube. You can go and look for, Fireball, look up No, No, No. And he's got the wizard hat on, he's playing a strat. That tone he's got, and that's embellished there, just jamming on it a little bit, Andrew.
Yep.
I'll listen to that. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ring that
Thank you,
neck.
bro, for
Yeah.
thank you for giving us your run. Can you do me a favor?
Mm.
Not immediately, but if
Yeah.
you get a chance, if you can put your recommendations in a comment, and I'll pin it. Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yeah, of course. Love to. I might even put a second comment up there on Elvis's top 5.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
Deep Purple's one of his favorite bands of all time because he does not shut up about Glenn Hughes. He just, you know, he loves Glenn Hughes. He loves that whole era of Deep Purple with Glenn Hughes. He goes, "Oh, I like, I play Machine Head for him." He goes, "I like it, Dad, but I don't know. It's not Burn. It's not the same."
Well, he's right. You know,
I,
again, when Hughesy came in there, he just took it to another direction. You know, you and
yeah,
I had the pleasure of having Zach on, and we did "Come Taste the Band." You know,
yeah,
we ranked
yeah,
that, and that was a polished
yeah.
Deep Purple. No disrespect, but it wasn't edgy, but it was a nice polished
Oh,
production.
I always saw that album as an integral part for all members of that band, except Richie Blackmore, obviously. But it was almost, in my opinion, the start of Whitesnake for David Coverdale, where he wanted to go.
You got it.
Glenn Hughes
Yep.
with his more funkier edge, and John Lord and Ian Pace were right on board with that album as well. And it was interesting to hear exactly where, say, John Lord positioned himself on "Come Taste the Band." He's not over the top on that record as opposed to Machine Head. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He positioned himself different, and so yeah, that's my opinion anyway. I think, but I will do that, Andrew. I'll put what I think my recommendations are for people to go listen to of Richie Blackmore's brilliance. And I think we've almost spoken about him here, but I will do that, and I'll do a cheeky one, and I'll put, Elvis's top 5 or
Please
top 10
do.
or whatever. Yeah,
There's a great comment here from our mate Tony,
yeah.
Rainbow. You know, great band as well. And you know, we've spoken about this a couple of times already. There's a lot of videos with Rainbow, and I like the fact how Blackmore just goes away over here, bro, doesn't he? He's like away from the band, just doing his own. And it's like,
Yeah.
we when I saw this, when I saw these videos, it gave me a fuller appreciation, bro, of when I first discovered Richie Blackmore in Deep Purple back in the early days, in the early 80s when I was at high school. I got an appreciation. Oh, this is why this guy sounds like this, because he's part of the band, but he sort of doesn't mind being standing right on the edge of the stage, bro. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. My son listens to, he's gone back to another DVD that he goes to bed watching now, but he used to watch California Jam. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he used to watch that, and he used to comment on Richie's laying up the amp and all that stuff. But he used to comment on Richie's playing on Mistreated with that
Yep.
delay and everything like that, and the phase effect and whatever he was using. But we're listening to we were listening to Mistreated the other day in the car from the record, Burn, and he was pinpointing particular parts of that solo and the
Wow.
tone and this and that, and I was like, wow, my son's really got his head around this. He's never really spoken about Richie Blackmore as he does like Glenn Hughes, but he really acknowledges Richie Blackmore. I told him, it's Richie Blackmore's 80th birthday. We're going to listen to, Deep Purple this week. So, of course, he puts Burn on straight away. Burn, and then we listen to that. And whenever he wasn't in the car, I'd put something else on Deep Purple, but then we'd go back to Burn when he'd get back in the car. and we're listening to Mistreated, and he commented on how remarkable that was. And I mentioned about Ritchie being a bluesman with Lazy. Well, Mistreated is another one, and he continued to do that song a lot in his career, Andrew, including in Rainbow with Dio singing it and whatnot. There's a wonderful version of that with Dio singing live. I've forgotten what record that's off. It's Rainbow Live or something like that, where Dio singing Mistreated, and Richie's playing on that is, next level. It's like he just kept evolving that song throughout his career.
And rest in peace, Ronnie, because we love Ronnie. We've ranked Heaven and Hell on the channel, and I think that came at a really, really important time in Ronnie's life too, joining Rainbow, because it gave him, no disrespect, but it gave him the exposure that he needed, bro. To be in this group with clearly one of the greatest British rock guitarists in the world, and an important part of Ronnie's career.
Yeah. Ronnie James Dio, even someone as eccentric as Ritchie Blackmore always got commended for his promptness, his tardiness, his professionalism, the way he just rock up and he'd perform at that elite level all the time. He was always in game mode when it came to the music.
So I'm going to interrupt, bro. I'm going to interrupt you. So when he's talking, and I'm talking about Ritchie during these lockdown things, and he's talking about Dio, and he said it blew him away. He said there was no warm up. He said he was used to other singers having, maybe it was a pot shot at other singers. I don't know, but he said, other singers needed to warm up and slowly get into it. He said the great thing about Ronnie is that Ronnie was always preparing before he came to rehearsal. He was always prepared before the gig, So he, bang, he hit it straight away, bro.
And I'll be honest with you, I've heard even like Tony Iommi, Ritchie Blackmore, everyone speaks very highly of Dio, including, like, say, another one of my favorite guitar players, Doug Aldridge, who played for Dio and even recorded on him with Killing the Dragon album. And there's another live recording he did. What's it called? I've forgotten. Where it's Doug Aldridge on guitar. And I listened to Doug Aldridge on a Dead Daisies live the other day, Andrew. I think I mentioned to you that, I was in the chat and I mentioned something there, and Doug Aldridge did a shout out to me, and I was like, oh wow, that's cool, he knows who I am. But the point I'm getting back to, which blew me away, but the point I'm getting back to is he spoke about Dio, and he spoke heavily about him being one of the only singers that would just be able to do night after night after night after night at his level, even when even when he had cancer, when he knew he's dying, and he'd rock up. He was, at one point, he'd be singing and coughing up blood and just coming out and singing like that. He was a remarkable musician, but everybody has a lot of respect for Ronnie James Dio, and Ritchie Blackmore is one of those guys that only ever speaks highly of Dio.
100%, bro. 100%, and it made me. I shed a bit of a tear when he said that, and I went and listened to Heaven and Hell, because, again, folks, and we've got TET Tets in the chat. Thank you, Tets, for offering some great comments. We're going to do a shout out soon when we wind the show up to all you guys. But one of the great things about Brad and I and the Rock Professor is weekly we rank tracks on this show. We pick an album and we go through and we talk about each track. I said this when we ranked Heaven and Hell. I was in high school when this album was released. Black Sabbath were an important band. We were listening to the first version of Black Sabbath with Ozzy Osbourne, you know, and that was freaking us all out. But then when Heaven and Hell came out, bro, you know, and those opening tracks, you know, Heaven and Hell, Neon Nights, still, bro, it's one of my favorite albums, bro.
Yeah. Oh, it is for me too. Every time I put the album Heaven and Hell on, it takes me back to the first time that I got my head around the fact that there was a different singer in Black Sabbath, because I was only ever listening to the Aussie period. I was younger, I was a bit sillier, and I only ever thought there was only one singer in Black Sabbath. And then when I heard Heaven and Hell, I was like, that's not Ozzy. Who's that? That's not Aussie. And then I went and investigated a little bit more. And this is, you know, before YouTube and Google and things like that. And I realized that they had a different singer after Never Say Die. And you know, listening to Heaven and Hell, I was like, wow, they just rebirthed the band. They just actually rebirthed the band. So
every
yeah, I
track's a
mean,
masterpiece.
yeah, every track is. And you know, bringing it full swing back to Ritchie Blackmore, Dio has a lot to thank Ritchie for as well. And he only ever spoke very highly of Ritchie.
100%, bro.
Mm.
You know, and this is what we like doing on this channel, according to our worldview at the moment, is we like to make all these threads and these connections and build this tapestry, you know, of these links, and you know, and we've just said it, you know, Rainbow gave Dio an opportunity to leapfrog. And put him into another level, and then he jumped into Black Sabbath and just went again to another level,
next level,
and because of Ritchie.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like Ritchie, you know, only ever had amazing things to really say about Ronnie James Dio, and Dio only ever put Ritchie on a pedestal as well. I always said that Ritchie was, you know, Ritchie Blackmore is, there's only one Ritchie, you know, Ritchie, you know, so I think they were both very important to each other in their careers. And I think they had that level of respect for each other that was very important. And that level of respect is very important in a band scenario, Andrew, as you know. Because if you don't respect the players or the people you've got, well, how are you going to create masterpieces, really? You've got to let each member of the band shine. So, you know.
And I think a lot of these British guys understood that too, because there's a tradition in British music where you know, it's a career for a lot of these guys. So this idea of spending some time in this band and then going into this band and getting paid to go over here and do this project, it's quite common, bro. You know, you know, because you got to pay the bills, bro. So you know, if you're not going to be in a long-term band in this project over here, like in the Rolling Stones, but you're going to be a lead singer, you know, and this project here is sort of not moving ahead, but someone's going to say, hey, come and join our, you know, so there's a history of that. And you know, at the end of the day, bro, it's a business.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. It is a business. You know what I mean? 100%. I mean, look, at the end of the day, similar things happened, even with Whitesnake, for example. Like Doug Aldridge was a writing partner with David Coverdale for many years. They recorded 2 albums with that collaboration of Coverdale with Aldridge, and I think a career move came for Doug Aldridge when he was offered a wage in Dead Daisies. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but
I think he knew the writing was on the wall, you know, hanging around with Coverdale, because, you know, look what he did to Sykes, you know, record this masterpiece and get rid of it, you know.
Yeah, well, I think he was always going to remain a member of Whitesnake, to be honest with you, Andrew. But I think Coverdale learnt a little bit from his previous mistakes with, say, Sykes and things like that. But in saying that, maybe he did know there was writing on the wall with Coverdale coming up. I know that there was this back and forth thing where with Doug went back to Dio for a bit, and I don't think Coverdale was too excited about that. So, and I know that's one of the reasons why Richie sort of lost interest in Deep Purple, maybe the direction of the band a bit, maybe the members were bugging him a little. We all know the backstory there. I'm not going to sort of bore everyone with that, but Richie was an eccentric guy back then, I think. But I'm going to come back to what you were talking about with Richie with his lockdown sessions where he'd come on. I think from watching that, he's well and truly humbled himself. Probably a little bit more, for lack of better ways of putting it, in hindsight, respectful now, and watching his past, looking back at it and acknowledging the accolades where before he wouldn't acknowledge it. So I guess that comes with maturity, Andrew.
Yeah. It is, and I like that. I like the fact that I want to hear an artist, I want to hear a guitar player say to me as a fan that I'm happy that you're enjoying my music. I'm happy. I'm glad that you've taken my music and it's helped you, etc., or you've celebrated with it.
100%, Andrew. I don't want to cut in on you there, Andrew, but I don't want to hear people say to me, like artists that I admire, downgrading their past because it's something that you admire so much about them and they're downgrading it. I mean, unfortunately, in recent light of a few things, particular artists writing books and not even acknowledging certain parts of their history that are big parts of my life, and big parts of the reason why I love a certain act. So without mentioning names there, I don't want to knock anyone and stuff like that, Andrew. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
I know.
But, and we've spoken about it too. So, but I think it's good to hear, just backing you up there, it's good to hear Richie acknowledging and giving praise to some of these things he did in the past.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And there's a lot of artists out there doing it. Neil Young is doing that now. He's just releasing another film from a tour last year, and he's released his third volume of his archives. So he's sitting down and he's saying thanks. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan of late. Never have been in the past, but I've caught up in the hype of the film, bro. So I've spent a bit of time listening to certainly a lot of those '60s albums that Dylan produced. It kind of irks me a little bit, because he's an artist saying I don't give a shit what you think about my music, and I'm going, oh, come on, man.
I think
come on, bro. Come on.
I don't really like that either, Andrew, because I think to myself, certain acts, when they sit down and they knock a certain period of their career that might be really important to you or something that you really admire, but they're not giving it accolade, or they talk like that. Like, I don't care whether you like it or not. It's a little bit, do you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's like John Lennon, the Playboy interview, the world famous Playboy interview. Go and check it out. And if you want to read somebody put the knife in to a band and 10 years of rock and roll history, go and read. And every page, it's just rips you apart, because John Lennon is just ripping the heart and soul out of the Beatles, bro. It's horrible. It's a horrible read.
Yeah, I know. Look, it's funny because for a long period of time, Richie would always knock his past and knock certain things about Deep Purple and previous members, but I think these days he even, like it or lump it, he talks about Gillan in a good light now and things like that, where before he wouldn't. So,
and he needed to, and 100%, bro. And I'm glad he has.
Yeah. Hey, it's a long time ago, and you got to let it go. You can't carry that to your grave, unfortunately, because you'll die a very unhappy person. You know, you got to
You
learn to
won't.
let go, and you know, it's good that, you know, I mean, public disputes, I don't agree with that. I always think if they got a falling out, they should keep it quiet, resolve it like men, and move on. At least acknowledge each other. And you know, mate, I've performed. I was in a band for 3 years with someone, invested a lot of my time, money, creative concepts, and put a lot of input into things, and um, you know, got burnt. But then like I acknowledge what he's doing now and what the band's doing, and think they're, you know, well done to them, and move on. You got to sometimes learn to do that, because that's that's a sign of a good man, in my opinion. Someone that can do that, let it go and move on. It's a godly way anyway. It's, you know, forgive, um, and move on. You don't have to physically ring them and say I forgive you and whatnot, but you just let it go. You know, forgive them in your own way, and that's what you have to do, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, well done. Well done,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
Bro, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you on this
Yeah.
Easter Sunday, you know, when you
Yeah.
should be doing things with family and friends. But
Yeah.
good that you've given us some of your time for our family and friends here on this part
Oh,
of the Brad Cook
yeah.
universe.
Well, we're all family and friends here, Andrew. So, you know, it is sharing Easter. We shared an egg and a Coke Zero each. So, you know, we even let everyone hear us munching them, like, you know. So we've never really done that on a show before, I don't think.
No.
You know,
I'm going to
we don't
wish you
sit
well,
in
bro.
I was going to knock someone, but I won't.
You've got a day off tomorrow?
Yep. Yes, but certainly tomorrow is going to be a day of just doing a few catch ups, but resting, and in trying to
Good.
enjoy, you know, bit of you know, family time, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. You know, yeah,
Good on you,
spend some
bro.
time with my
Appreciate it.
boy and things like that. You know,
Well
yeah,
done. I'm going to
yeah,
do a shout out to the folks in the chat.
yeah. Before you do, have you
And
got
I'm going to invite.
you got any plans for tomorrow? I didn't get a chance to ask you.
Oh, I might go to the beach. The weather here has been quite shitty, but it's hot, bro. It's 20 degrees.
Yeah,
It's still hot.
yeah, it's
Man,
like
you know, it's
yeah.
April. I've got my fan going here.
I've
Man,
been
it
going
should
to
be.
bed. I've been going to bed every night with my fan on. It's
Oh,
been very warm, very warm. It's been 26 degrees here. We've been getting
yeah.
low 30s here. That's Celsius for people who are in Fahrenheit. I'm talking Celsius degrees, you know. It's 25. It's currently about 21 degrees here, and it's
Yeah.
6 o'clock at night. So
It's hot, bro.
yeah.
So we're going to
Anyway,
go live this time next week, and we're going to have a
yeah,
special guest. His name
yeah,
is Matt. He's a bass player. He's a Jack Bruce fan, a
yep,
Cream fan. He's based in Prague, so we're looking forward to hanging out with him.
yep,
Thank you, folks, for joining us. I'm going to do a quick shout out. So, Tets, thank you for joining us. It was great here in Ireland, but it started raining. So, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, Tets, please do, and I'll make sure that we subscribe back to you. It's one of the things that we like to do when we get subscriptions.
yep,
We wish you all a happy Easter. Alan, thank you as ever for jumping on. Greg
yep,
Roberts Tunes, good to see you, bro. Jonas
yep,
Halberg, a good brother of ours from, I should know, he's from Sweden.
yep,
Norway.
yep,
Where the Vikings come from, bro.
yeah.
Viking. Let's just call it Viking land. Arvin,
Yeah.
good to see you, brother. Who else is in the chat here hanging out with us? We had the Rock Professor, Tony Bowen, as ever. Good to see you, brother. Drops. Haven't seen Drops for a while. Good to see you, Drops. He's going to reserve his comment on the Blues. It's all good, bro. You can say
Yeah.
or reserve any comment you want. You're more than welcome, so long as it's respectful, eh, bro?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And everyone's entitled to an opinion, so we're happy for that. That's great.
I think that's everybody. We had, I think we had Johnny Heartbreaker up earlier, bro, as
Yep.
well. Johnny Heartbreaker, there he is. So we wish you, everybody, a happy Easter.
Yep.
Sweden. Brad,
Yeah.
this is a pub quiz.
Yeah.
What's the reason musically why Sweden is famous?
ABBA?
Yes. Good on you.
Oh
You
my
got that
goodness.
right, because ABBA were huge in Aussie, bro. You guys made
Yeah.
them. Every song they had went to #1 in Aussie.
Yeah. We all know them. Sweden.
Has anybody seen Richie live? No, I haven't. I haven't had the pleasure.
No, I missed seeing him live, but seen plenty of live performances obviously on the internet, DVD as well, VHS. Had a lot of bootlegs of Deep Purple through the 80s and stuff like that. But Richie had a eccentric time when he came back to the band. Yeah, there was a DVD there where he was not very happy with being in the band or getting filmed and throwing things at film. I don't know. That was a weird time for Richie, I think.
Yeah. Giannis, forgive me for not remembering that you came from Sweden, bro. We're brothers. Forgive me. I hope the fact that I just said that you came from where Vikings come from elevates me to a higher status, because I'd be pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Are we here, bro?
Yeah, it's good. I'm disappearing in my my screen.
Yeah. You're slowly going away to another dimension.
It's just gone dark, and I've completely lost all my light. So yeah, I'm disappearing. So it's time to go.
All right. Bye, folks. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Oh, what a show. Good stuff. Bye.
See you guys.